So I would call this session to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone would rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Any changes to the agenda? Seeing none. Okay, we'll move on to public comments. So Nick, if you'll put the policy up. As a reminder.
All right, so as this policy is coming up, I guess just as a reminder, this is Nicholas Handy, School Board Secretary, Communications Coordinator. Policy will be up hopefully shortly. If you could just use your first name, last name, and give us your town of residence to make a public comment. We're having an issue with the spot real quick. So first name, last name, town of residence. Try to keep public comments to the agenda items. If you're in our digital audience, feel free to use the hand raise feature at the bottom of the screen and we can acknowledge you from there. It looks like our policy is not wanting to come up for us.
Technical difficulties tonight. We've all had some little glitch.
All right, I'm not seeing anybody wanting to make public comments right now. We do have a second session at the end of the meeting for anybody interested.
Okay, thank you. All right, then let's move on to the superintendent's report.
All right, this will be linked into the document later on, so you can go back and see this. The bulk of the superintendent's report is a COVID update. It goes a little bit deeper now that we've been in school several weeks longer, just to kind of see how we're doing. You know, you've been on the receiving end of several emails, just letting you know of when there's COVID situations, you know, and other situations that are occurring as well, but just kind of want to put it all into graphic form and be able to talk about kind of the trends that are happening. Also, just a little bit of a fun piece of information. We'll certainly broadcast this out later on, whether it be Tuesday or Wednesday, in some of our weekly conversations that we have through email and on Facebook and so forth. Is I went to the App Store on my phone today, and I typed in Jaffrey Ringe CSD. CSD stands for Cooperative School District. So Jaffrey Ringe CSD, and I found an app that has our the JR CSD mobile app, and it's working. I can get to the website, get to any of the well, as long as there's good internet and signals and so forth. But that if you go there right now, people who are watching this, I think there are about between 8 and 15 individuals online right now. You can be the first ones to go and get that app, and and here we go. So people are getting it right now as we speak. So that's exciting. There's another app that is going to be coming later on that has to do more with push notifications and yes.
We through this app right now, one of the big features that we have is the ability to do a push notification. So things like anything that we would announce in a robocall would be something that we'd use a push notification now at this point. So if you have a snow day, some change in the learning environment, things of that nature, you know, school bus changes, which we recently announced, that can all come in the form of a push notification. So in addition to getting a phone call, in addition to getting an email, you'll also get a ping on your phone if you have the app that tells you.
Yeah, if you have the app.
Yes, right. And then what Ruben's referring to is a second school messenger communication app, which just has additional communications related functionality that's within the next, hopefully, year that we can implement that.
Great. So just wanted to mention that. So we can start this right here. So as is typical, I show the updated COVID-19 data from the state just in graphical form and like an infographic basically that the state has on its website. You can see the website right there. there's several other bits of information tonight that come from that website right there, covid19.newhampshire.gov. And you can see the going back in May and then going back up to November and then down again in the kind of that May timeframe, and then August goes down, then we go up again. Interestingly enough, I had an article, and Nick actually sent me an article that he had read. We've been looking for math information all along. We've been talking like, let's not follow the science, let's follow the math and see what's happening. Because science, there's science on all sides of the arguments of what to do. And so the New York Times had an article that came out today that talked about what seemed, we don't know if it's a pattern yet, but at least there's a couple different iterations of having these spikes and then for like a couple months and then go down for a couple months, then up for a couple months, then down for a couple months. And it depends on, you know, what's going on with variants and so forth. So right now, what they're saying across the United States, and we're seeing it a little bit in New Hampshire, a little bit there, not as much as what the downward trend is right now throughout the entire country, is that we may have hit that kind of peak again, and then we'll go down a little bit, and then we'll see if it comes up again in another couple months or so, like around the end of November and December, January timeframe. Now, maybe it's not that perfect of an equation that it's going to do that, but it has kind of it was enough of a coincidence, at least, that the New York Times decided to make an article out of it. So we go to the next slide. This one is interesting because, and I haven't shown this one really, but it speaks to the current state that we're in, and really actually all the way through this pandemic that we've had. I circled the 0 to 9 and 10 to 19 because those are the groups that we serve. We certainly have employees and people that we that are impacted who are in older categories from 20 on up and so forth. But just some interesting information, I thought, as we look at from 0 to 9, you have a smaller infection rate, less likely for those individuals to be infected. When you are infected, it's less likely to be hospitalized. And certainly we haven't in New Hampshire had any deaths in those areas. And the same thing is true for that 10 to 19, albeit that 10 to 19 and 20 to 29, those they do tend to get sick more. So the frequency of illness is higher in that range. And I think that data, the reason why I show this data right here is because at the beginning of the year, I talked about the likelihood, especially as the Delta was being rolled out in conversation about it having a much higher contraction or infection rate, was that the likelihood was that we were going to have more infections this time around. And the question was, what would be the impact from a severity standpoint? And what was it that we were going to decide as a school board and as a school district that we would, what's our tolerance level? And so still looking at this information right here through the time with the Delta variant and prior to that, the hospitalization rate and the death rate is very low in those categories that we have for school age, but certainly the infection rate is higher in that middle school to high school range. And so we would expect to see more rates or more cases within that middle school to high school range. This is just the bi-weekly update. We did increase in cases in the last 14 days, to 25 and 24. I think Swansea, as of this morning, was 22. Keene was like 122. A couple other places in the area, but actual active cases are 19 and 14. Many of those are within the population of that 10 to 19 range within our school. At least half, probably, I wouldn't, maybe not half at this point, but about a third of those active cases are likely to be school-age kids, which actually is what the percentages were, a couple of weeks ago that they were saying in the news that it was a much higher rate, about a third of those individuals. So we're trending very similarly than what the state is trending. Jaffrey didn't really go up in vaccination percentages. I think it went up maybe 0.02% or 0.03%. I was able to round it up to a 0.8 at 44.8, and Ringe did go up 0.2% from the last time that we talked in the vaccination percentages. Both of those are well below the state average, which is not quite 60% according to this website, but it's really close to that. So I think we skipped a slide there by accident. Yep, there we go. So this is just 2 weeks of information. We've been collecting not only illness information of general illness, but also COVID cases and quarantine. So people who are absent due to quarantine. And so red represents illness not COVID positive, or at least we don't have evidence that it is. Yellow means COVID positive. And blue is quarantine or testing. So when I say quarantine, they're quarantined and they don't have to usually quarantine as long as they do, but some people don't want to get tested, or because places have been taking a lot longer to get the test results back. They've been out longer for periods of time. So if I look at, for instance, the yellow, and I see that on September 20th across the district, we had 4 active COVID cases during that time frame, or 4 students were out because they were positive. They were in their process of being positive for COVID. The next day that says 4, that isn't 4 more. That's the same 4 most likely. Now it's possible that 1 could have fallen off from a previous quarantine and 1 came back on, but that's the idea. And you'll see that over the last couple of weeks that we ended last week and with 15 across the entire district out due to COVID, the majority of those being in the middle high school area. It doesn't mean we had 15 that just erupted last week. Those individuals would all be counted actually in those prior numbers, most likely, because with an exception of maybe 2 or 3 who came on board late in the game. And I sent out another one today that we had a COVID case in CHS, which was from the prior. Most of these, and looking at these, what we do is we do a nice job trying to find out exactly where the connections are. Are they people in the same classrooms? Are they people in the same area activities? In one or two occasions, we found that a couple individuals shared the same after-school activity together. You will note, and we'll talk about this later on, that or I noted last week that we had a cluster for individuals on a bus route, and I'll talk about that and what that actually means. But we have not had a defined cluster within any of our schools. We don't have evidence of any transmission actually within our schools, because even the ones when we find out that people have been in the same area together, we also find out that they've been in the same area outside of school together, or in many cases, a lot of these are from the same families. So there's groups of families that have been ill here. Yeah.
So are all those students or some of those staff and some of those faculty?
These are all students. Yep, these are all learners. You'll see that on the 24th of September, we had quite a few individuals out of the district. That would be a total of like a little over 100. That's been our peak. That's probably been the highest one we've had this year. Okay. Yep. So JGS, now it's just, we're just going to look at what it looks like at each school. So this data is included in what you just saw. And you'll see that in the last 2 weeks, they've had as high as 3 out at a time. Some of these individuals who were like, I don't report all COVID cases if these individuals have not been in our schools at all. So they haven't been around anybody. We still report them to the state, but I don't, it's not really valuable information to give to people when they haven't been exposed to these individuals. And we have a couple other cases like that as well, where people haven't been here during the time frame that they would have been positive for COVID. And so there are people getting COVID on outside situations, or if they're parents, adults, they're home quarantining or supporting their kids who have COVID, and then they get it, and that's what ends up happening. So sometimes we don't report all that stuff out because it doesn't have any bearing on people's health around them. So in the last couple of days, the 30th and the 1st, we didn't have any cases at JGS, and there were no cases today reported either. RMS. There are some gaps in information here. You'll see on the 30th, and I think there's another date there. Oh, the 21st. 21st, I think that the numbers got all put into one category. You'll see that the 21st and the 22nd are very similar. My guess would be that 17 that is illness, not COVID, is probably a mix of illness, not COVID, and quarantine. Yeah. And then the same thing happens on the 27th. We've had a few things happen within the RMS offices that have gotten, different people have been reporting, so they've reported in a different way. But the ones that are the same are the ones that have the yellow, red, and blue. And you'll see that two, for instance, those are all the same individuals across the board, but at one time, that's within a school setting. And then JRMS, you see that's very different. So we had for a while nothing in JRMS. When I first said that we had some cases in CHS JRMS, they were CHS. Then after that, starting the 24th, most of them have been JRMS, and very few of them, comparatively speaking, have been CHS until today. And so you'll see that 11 of total cases, several of them, like I said, were in that cluster on the bus that happened, back in the 22nd, 23rd time frame, and in a couple other locations, but they've been spread out. It hasn't been like all 6th grade, all 7th grade, all 8th grade. It's just been kind of spread across in different categories with no necessary rhyme or reason, apart from family. Yeah.
Could your charts include a footnote at the top that have the number of students in the school? It's, 11 out of.
Yeah, so like 11 out of 330, I believe it is, or 320 for JRMS.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
Just for consistency.
We do have percentages and stuff elsewhere. Yes.
No. I just,
No, not right now, but for later on, if we want to do
people will
that,
want to
yeah.
know the context for which they're putting the numbers in.
Sure, we're going to show some of that percentage data a little bit later. But yeah, absolutely. So you have about 400 students in the high school, and you have about 320 or so in the middle school.
Great.
Mhm. And then CHS, actually, those numbers have been, I would have expected to see those COVID numbers a little bit higher, given the data that first slide I showed you between 10 and 19. It doesn't surprise me that the greatest number of illnesses is in the middle school. We were actually working on some mathematics comparing to last year at this exact time. And the group that was highest at this exact time of the school year was the middle school. So it follows the same trends in the elementaries, just illness in general. Putting COVID aside, the illness in general has been higher in the middle school last year. The exact same time frame, actually it mimics what we have this year. The percentages of people out last year during this time frame were very similar. In some cases the same. In some cases we're actually better off this year than last year. We have more positive COVID cases this year, certainly. We didn't have any until I think November last year.
Do you think it's a possibility that there are high school students that may be vaccinated, but we may not have that opportunity in the middle school?
Well, what we're seeing is, so the middle school,
know who's
almost
vaccinated,
all
not,
middle
but-
school and high school learners have the opportunity to be vaccinated. We do not have a high percentage of individuals vaccinated, maybe Jaffrey, maybe what, 15-20% tops, and what it was, a paper said 13% in Ringe. It's not something that we have a high number of in this area. That being said, we're seeing a lot of individuals who are vaccinated. These numbers include people who have been vaccinated. Certainly adults have been positive and they've been vaccinated. They're not seriously ill.
Right.
but nonetheless, they're still getting sick, and we still are bound by certain, not as many, but certain pieces of the quarantine work that we have to do with New Hampshire DPHS.
Sorry.
Sure.
Have we compared our pre-COVID illness compared to our COVID? Just wondering what the gap is between numbers.
Like from 3 years ago?
Yeah.
We haven't, we've only looked at so far last year and
Last
this
year and this
year,
year.
and we're collecting data a little bit differently this year. But we have found some ways that we can get apples to apples.
Mhm.
So we're trying to be a little more specific this year with quarantine, because last year we had so many out due to quarantine. We
Yeah.
quarantined so many. And so I want to show that that's still the highest when we, and the reason maybe why we
Our
don't have,
mitigation.
our mitigation measures, our nurses are doing a great job if they, they have a checklist, if they have specific symptoms, they follow that. So it's very objective of certainly if there's different situations, like they know that an individual has allergies or so forth, they'll take that into consideration, but they're not fooling around. They've taken flack for it, as I'm sure nurses all around have, and that's unfortunate, but they've done a good job. And so when people are here, if they are COVID positive, they're out of here fairly quickly in the day for the most part. We can flip to another slide. And this is just a different way of looking. This is today, because none of that information included today, because it was built before today. But you can see that the information is the same. If you go down below into JRMS, they've been in that yellow category, 11%, 10%. I think they were at 12% at one point in time. I don't think they've gone any higher than that. Same time last year, they were in a similar position. The rest of them have been below 10%, usually hovering around the 5 or 4% range. So of people out, that's that bottom area. As for that top one, that's just the data that came in today to inform that whole spreadsheet. So learners in quarantine, we have 48 total across the district. 105 individuals across the district who are out for some sort of illness. And so percentages, we have about 1,300 individuals right now. So that's 100 out of that.
So
Mhm.
the green line, there's total absence due to illness.
Mhm.
And I thought you said that the learners in quarantine were not COVID positive, so they're in quarantine for another reason,
Mhm.
are not in a total absence due to the illness.
Mhm.
That's a good point.
At least that's what you said. You weren't counting them before.
This learner absent, not COVID related. Learner absent, COVID positive. So if you go back to 2 slides, the whole bar is total illness, is what I'm saying it is. And the blue,
So
the blue is,
let me ask you
yeah.
a question.
Yeah.
We're talking about a 20% absentee due
Mhm.
to illness
Mhm.
to go to masks. So that 20% includes those who are quarantined.
yeah, because they were quarantined due to having symptoms. And they're waiting for testing.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is health involved in that
I
process.
just want to make sure that we're
Yeah.
clear on
Right,
the
they're
numbers
not
that we're using.
quarantining because of exposure, they're quarantining because of symptoms.
Or people who are out and could get tested, but are refusing to be tested. So they're out for that period of time. So that's where we're at. We're still in the yellow area, which is the recommended masking required indoors. Do I have another slide on this one, Nick? We do. Okay, so this was bus 48. This is what I reported on last week, which the state indicated was a cluster. We had 4 learners test positive around that 9/22 timeframe, all in the secondary. I can't give you great details about the specific individuals because it identifies them potentially. But what I can say is there were other connections other than the bus that were involved with this. If you were to look at the pictures of this, I have them on my computer. I viewed the footage and have a picture of the individuals on the bus during that time frame. Bus 48 had about 10 individuals on it in the morning. Obviously not as many in the afternoon because they were sent home.
Yeah.
But they were spaced out. They were not sharing seats. Every single one of them had a mask on. Their social distancing was well over 3 feet. In most cases, more than 6 feet. In some cases, you can see the windows open as well. So there's other ventilation, they're spread out. So the likelihood that it was a cluster in that bus because of the transportation is highly unlikely. It is more likely that those individuals plus perhaps some other individuals that may be from that same area that, you know, they pick up in a specific region or whatever, that maybe there's some people who hang out together, or maybe there's some other things going on in those regions. I don't know. But there could be some other reasons why those individuals were all on the same bus, because a couple of them certainly weren't even close to other ones during that time frame. So while the state will say it's a cluster because they're just going by the numbers, the likelihood is that there was not spread on that bus. Now, there are other buses that that have 5 times the number of learners than that, and we have not seen spread on those buses. And there's been no correlation there at all. But going back to our original slide of showing where the percentages of illness are, the buses that have more people on them are typically in Ringe and Summit Jaffrey Elementary School. You have more kids riding the elementary buses, and they don't transmit it according to the data as much. So and most of them, in the footage that I've seen on the various buses, the masks are on. We have caught some situations where they have not. Kids have come off the bus without masks. So we have been in contact with our bus company. They've been very cooperative. Of course, you also are aware through some communication I've put out that we have done some consolidation of bus routes in Jaffrey, at least. I think we're even looking at some possible other consolidation down the road. You know, side effect is it saves some money for the district, but the rationale for it is because you only have so many bus drivers, and we're in pretty tough shape. So we have the owner, you know, the managers, the office people, they're all driving buses to make sure that it all works, because they were down so many. Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah, just, I mean, are there any questions? I mean, here we are. This is the very interesting thing, because I've been following the news quite closely and talking with my fellow superintendents and so forth. There, you know, WMUR had a report. I think it was Hillsborough Deering. They were talking about, you know, might we need to go remote or close down our school because we've had so many clusters within our buildings. And I think they're fully masked is what I understand, but I'm not entirely sure if that's the case over there. Some other schools in that same kind of boat. There was an article in the paper this past weekend. I think it was in Manchester and maybe a couple other places saying we might need to have that remote option. Having more of a conversation due to because of faculty, lack of faculty and so forth, which has certainly been on our minds. But we have not, you know, I don't know the reasoning. Obviously, we have probably looser mask policies than in the immediate region, not the loosest ones from a standpoint of masking. You know, there are a lot of schools in the state that are not having, they make masks optional. So the fact that we have it within 3 feet and so forth, when the math says you need to have a little more protection, makes us a little bit more moderate in the state. But in the area, we're probably the only ones, Messinic off and on, where we have the mask policy that we do have. That being said, we don't have the evidence of spread in a facility that perhaps some others, even with masks, are having. I'm gonna, you know, we'll talk facilities later on, but Possibly, part of that is that we do have our I waves going on 2 hours before school starts. Our air is flowing and we have it going on 2 hours after we leave here. And the ionization is continuously going on throughout the entire day, which is killing a lot of the allergens and also, kind of deactivating the water droplets that are in the moisture that is in the air. So I'd like to think that's a piece that is different than many places.
Right, are there any other questions?
Just one, what are the staff outages looking like?
We have a fair number of absentees and needs for subs at all of our buildings. That's every year. For COVID purposes, we have had our RMS has been hit pretty hard. Good 4 people out at a time, which is a lot. Instructional associates. Doesn't mean that staff is actually getting infected, but if staff has a student they have to be out for a little while, and then sometimes what inevitably happens is if they're helping take care of their learner, they get sick. Even though most people are vaccinated, there's still, if you're sick, we have to follow the regulations out there, and that gets people to be quarantined for a period of time. So it's not as bad as it could be, but it's because we have so few individuals, like we don't have any extra. So anytime we have people out for any purposes, it's very tough.
Could you foresee a time when, with flu season coming and the variant still strong, could you foresee a time when school might not be able to happen if we don't have enough adults? Like, what would that even look like?
Yeah, so our goal from the beginning of this year was to keep kids in school, to have school in person, keep people here as much as possible. And that informed a lot of how we developed our practices and procedures. And we keep on following to make sure we're being healthy and everything in the process. And I think we've done a really great job. Certainly John's crew has done an impeccable job. I think the best it's ever done since I've been here, keeping things clean, and we don't even have everyone, it's not even fully staffed yet, but we're getting there. Certainly with any sort of illness, flu, more COVID, the combination of all these things, it could be a situation where we're down to so many with staff. We had the same problem last year, that way. The majority of staff, just to kind of give you some data, the majority of staff are vaccinated, and also we'll have a flu clinic up here coming up pretty soon. Would like to get that for students if parents want that as well. Certainly not forcing anyone to get anything of that nature. Just in case, just for some extra protection if people desire that. When we look at the masks, the majority of adults are wearing masks during the school day. I wear mine 100% of the time, except if I'm at my desk. Most are in that similar category. So I think they're doing a good job keeping other people safe that way.
I walked around
each
all
other.
4 buildings this past week and saw mostly masks. It's students and staff.
Well, the individuals who are going to transmit it the most are the adults. And so I think that our staff has done an exceptional job realizing that even though they're protected and even if they get sick, they're going to be okay. They're going to want to make sure that they're not passing on anything else to other people. Yeah.
John,
What do we know what the percentage of vaccination among staff is?
I don't know exactly. I think it's around 90%. It's not 100%. I definitely know that.
Right. Well, 90 would be very high if it's up.
Yeah, and it might be, if you include all staff, maybe a little bit lower. Yeah. So.
I appreciate the creativity that the district has come up with in terms of transportation for extracurricular activities and trying to ensure that there's continuity of transportation. That's not easy with everything that's going on, but that's been very helpful. Good to see people being creative.
Yeah, a lot of people have stepped up. Parents have done a great job doing, more than their role really in this kind of situation as well. Our coaches as well.
Okay, well, then let's move on. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
And we'll go to the consent agenda. So I need someone to make a motion.
I make the motion that we accept the consent agenda as written.
Patty, thank you.
I'll second Patty's motion.
Alicia, thank you. And because Christine's remote, I'm going to do roll call. So let me start with you, Christine.
Yes.
Thank you. Alicia,
Yes.
thank you, Patty.
Yes.
Thank you, Charlie.
Aye.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
Thank you, John.
Yes.
Thank you. I say yes. Passes 700. Abstain. Object, abstain. There's no one else to object or abstain, but okay. All right, so now we're up to the facilities update. John.
John Leclerc, the Facilities Director.
Is definitely on.
Yes, I can hear him fine.
Okay,
Yes.
we see her now.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm the Facility Director, AKA the Grim Reaper. Yeah, I gotta have a little bit of humor. I do have several items here to kind of give you an idea of where we're at. Some of them have been completed or just about completed, current projects and future projects. As you can see, the facility garage, hooray, has finally been done and everything is fine over there. I believe the cost, just to let you know, somewhere between 150, 200,000, I believe, is what the sources tell me on the facilities garage. But it's turned out very nice. The maintenance people are working in it now, working out of it. And I think it's very attractive and it's doing what it's supposed to do. The Ever Alert clocks, as just about everyone should be having those in their rooms and offices now. That was a long process because of things happen to the faceplates and so forth. But I will tell you that even though they're all up, or 99% of them are up, the company who provided them will be coming in around, I think it's December 2nd, with their own crew of people, and they're going to replace on their dime every one of the clocks, every single one of them, and reprogram them and put them where they're supposed to be going, where we have them right now. So that's their good faith effort of apologizing for what happened. They're a very reputable company and they want to make sure that everyone feels good and happy. So they will be coming in that week. I think it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, to replace every one of them.
Wow.
And reprogram for us. So that's a good thing. The district mold remediation. As you know, we had a doozy of a summer. And this was part of it. And because of the unit ventilators we have, the actual mold, we're in the rooms where we just have unit ventilators that are not dehumidification. They're just either 0 on or they're 100% on. And when they're 100% on, they were taking all that humidity that was coming in from a very, very humid summer. And obviously it hit all the rooms that had carpeting, which I'll get to down below about what I feel about carpeting. But the mold remediation, we took care of it. We did have to have ServPro come in and rent us some equipment. It was around, I think, $13,000 to rent the dehumidification equipment to keep it, to bring down humidity levels so we could work on it for about a week. And then we had the same company out of Boston that was going to give us some quotes on trying to get rid of all the mold. And after they told us what that number was for a weekend. It was around $80,000. And after I got back in my chair, we said no, and we asked them what the process was, what the chemicals were and so forth. And then they told us. We went out and got the same chemicals, did the process ourselves. We didn't need their $80,000 service. And we went ahead and passed. After we did it for the next few days, we did exactly what we were supposed to do. And we had it retested by EOC, and we came back with flying colors and we passed all the tests. So that was a good thing on our crew to be able to go in there and really buckle down and save the district $80,000. That was a good thing. That's a positive. The SAU flooding remediation. There for a while, I thought I was gonna have to build an ark. That was, it flooded a couple of times. And of course, the reasons for that flooding was our piping under the school, especially the piping that starts at the SAU hallway, all the way down underneath the Pratt's gym out to the drainage area. It took a while just to find out where the piping was, because we don't have any plans, we don't have any drawings, anything that tells us the freeway of piping underneath the school. So it was a hit and miss trying to bring in outside company, which is Belmore. And we did find that the pipes that were in question were underneath the Pratt, where they start dipping and curving and bending. And unfortunately, the pipes were old pipes, they were clay pipes. And the way they tried to treat the elbows where they actually joined to make curves and 90-degree turns, they didn't do the elbows properly. There was big gaps in those elbows. They just threw mortar on them, and over time, it just deteriorated. So what that gap was doing was just bringing down sand and rocks and anything that could through moisture into the pipes, blocking the pipes. And it didn't happen in just one place, but it happened in two different places. That's why we had two different floods, because we thought we took care of the first one, didn't know where the second one was until we got cameras, and it was a long process to try and find them. But we did find them. That remediation just from the outside company was somewhere around $35,000 to $40,000, just to give you an idea of just those pipes that caused the problem. The flooding also caused other problems in the SAU area. A lot of damage in the SAU area, in the special services area. My latest numbers are probably talking somewhere around $70,000, probably when we get done, somewhere in that ballpark, because there was work that had to be done by ServPro, there's work that had to be done by Hutter, work to be done by the tiling people, and that's not finished yet, which is down below in the current projects. So it was an interesting time. The shop renovation, real quickly, that took place. I don't have a picture, I wish I did, but that's when we took that whole wall down, relocated the unit ventilators, the electric and so forth, and that's all been done. And if you ever saw it, it's a nice wide open space. I think it's just an excellent, much better than what it was before. And it gives the teacher and the students a whole lot of space, open space to work in. And it's very nice looking. Our old friend, the paving. Paving is all done between RMS and the high school and middle school here. The only thing left really is a punch list, which I've put together for the company. It's going to take some time to go through the punch list. But as far as if you wanted to get that Nick, on the paving, just to give you an idea of the cost, to show you what it is, and it's excluding just one last change order, which is change order number 10. That's around $35,000. So the price would be like $1,245,000 instead of $1,910,000. And that change order just hasn't come through yet by the time they applied for a payment. And that $35,000 was for the drainage pipe, a 400-foot drainage pipe that I had to put over there by the silo road area, because that wasn't draining any water whatsoever. There was no catch basins. There was nothing over there, and it was causing a lot of weeping and wicketing of the water. So we had to put a drainage pipe in there so that new asphalt would last a long time. But that kind of gives you an idea of the cost. I mean, we started for just this parking lot, an existing parking lot that range around, I think, 361. And then we had some upgrades that we had to do around the parking lots. Renge, we put on an additional parking lot. I don't know if any of you had a chance to see the new parking lot at Renge, but I think it looks,
If you scroll up, do you have some pictures in there?
no, I don't believe so.
Okay.
No, not on that one. We're trying to put this all together before we ran out of time. And, but if you've seen it, you'll know what I mean. I think it looks really, really nice, and the grass is starting to really grow and gives more lawn for Jeremy to mow. And there's some punch list items there, not a lot, but there's some there that they have to take care of to prevent some erosion and so forth. But it looks really nice. You can go back to the main one, please, Nick. The asbestos remediation. Well, just about at the same time we had the mold problem, we had an asbestos problem. And the asbestos remediation was over by the special services area. And it really began because we were having it all retiled because of the flooding. And we had the Lawson Group, who specialized in asbestos, come to the school before any tiling was done, just to make sure that, you know, where are any hot spots, where is there asbestos and not asbestos, and if there are, what to do. We had him come over. It was Dick Lent from the Lawson Group. He checked it all over and said, yes, you got a few hot spots here on the tile, but they're firm, that haven't been touched. So just go ahead and make sure you don't disturb them and tile over them. And that's exactly what was told to the tile company. Unfortunately, sometimes people don't pass that information along to their crew. And before we know it, Lou came around the corner and all that tile that wasn't supposed to be disturbed was disturbed. So immediately we went and took precautions and shut down, sent everybody home, they shut the place down, got in the Lawson Group to come in and check it out. And it took about 3 or 4 days for them to go through and abate and remediate that whole area, tent it all off, make sure everybody is safe and so forth. And after the 4th day, the reports came back where everything cleared, it was passed, you can reoccupy the place. And I was told there's a threshold of about 70 parts per million, and we only had 1 part per million, but the school still has to react accordingly. And we did. The state came in, they did their own inspection, they asked their own questions, and we sent the reports to them, and we're fine. In the meantime, Lou Chattel is the designated person for asbestos, so we're looking at this stuff really closely. In fact, when I get down into the HVAC current projects, we're also having the Lawson Group, before anything is touched, to have the Lawson Group inspect where they're going to be touching and putting in ductwork to make sure there's no asbestos. And we've already found that there is some over at JGS in the cafeteria ceiling tiles. So we're having them come back tomorrow to evaluate whether it needs to be abated, or can we put a suspended ceiling down underneath it. We'll find out when they come back tomorrow at 11 o'clock to take a look at it. Piping repairs, we already get into that. That was all part of the flooding remediation. And again, that was around $35,000 to $40,000. And the RMS paving expansion, it was just up there as a separate project, which it was, but that's all part of the completed projects that we've done so far. There are a lot smaller ones, but these are kind of the major projects that we've been working on. The current projects, again, the flooding is there only because we're not quite finished. They have to come back this next weekend to finish tiling the common area and the special service area and 1 office in that area, and then that'll be done. That's why it was just carried over to current. The transformer replacement, all that had been done and dogged, and Grace Electric has done all their stubbing of all the electrical wires and so forth. That was around $50,000 for them to do that work. That transformer is going to be delivered and installed this Wednesday around 8 o'clock in the morning. It's not going to be turned on. It's going to be installed. So there'll be cranes and so forth. And I've already notified the people that we're blocking that area off for that particular day, just so they know if they park there, they're going to have to park there for their day. They won't be able to get out. And Eversource is coming in with a new transformer. The other transformer, we're going to have to take a look at, and they're going to be switching over the transformer to the new one on November 2nd, Monday. We aren't going to be able to do a whole lot with the existing transformer. The one thing I am going to ask Eversource is if they can try and, once it's turned off, cap it so it's not leaking anymore. I know there's a slow leak according to them. That's one of the reasons we're having to change transformers is the PCBs that are coming out from the old transformer. That's going to require an outfit like Clean Harbors to come in and take care of it properly. If we can get them to stop, and it's not like a fast leak or a hard leak, it's just a slow drip, but I just want to make sure that if we can't get to it now because of weather, I want to make sure we can at least stop it so it doesn't leach into the soil and go further, because that's going to cost more money to remediate the soil once we can get into the soil. And we'll find that out when they actually turn it off, because there's no way to look at it. It's humming away and we can't stop it. Otherwise, we'll shut down electricity in the building. So hopefully I'll find out more on that on November 2nd when they shut it down. The structural assessment, I had a structural engineer come in last Wednesday because I wanted to make sure that this building, if we're doing a lot of changes to it over time, that it's it's fit, it's structurally has integrity. So I brought him in. His name was Stephen Tarbox. He's out of Keene. I've known him for years. He's a structural engineer, has done a lot of work in these areas. And I brought him in and walked him through all the insides of the building, all the outside of the building, the total building. I do have a report. It's a 2-page report, but basically he says, and I was surprised. He says he was surprised how remarkable good shape this building is based on what has happened over the last 60 years. Because he's looking at you have the original building, let's say 1918-ish. You have another building that's built in the 50s and more work done in the 80s and then more work done in the 2000s. He says every time you add on and add on and add on, obviously it causes stress. And he was saying that the stress differential really happened at the beginning when he kind of shows me his curves. When you add on and add on, you'll have some stress cracks, you'll have some stress issues, but they usually start in the first couple, 3 years. And then over time, it just drops in the curve, it goes down to the bottom. And when he was looking, those years of what we did here was important to him because he didn't see any stress cracks, anything major at all, from the times that work was done on the buildings, which tells him that that stress differential stopped after the first couple of years or so. Now, he doesn't have X-ray eyes. He couldn't look into the walls or into the above the ceilings. But everywhere he did look, and he actually even tested the foundations to see if there's rebar in the foundations, which there were rebar in the foundations. Not as much as if you would do today, but there was a couple of rebars horizontally in all the foundations around the building, which was a good thing. It's better than none. He looked at the steel L bars that are up on the second floor that kind of hid the cracks from going down to the first floor. He said, believe it or not, that's not uncommon for buildings like this. It hasn't changed. He's looked it over and nothing has changed. So he says, that's good. So overall, he gave the building a very good mark, saying that he would not worry about any major problems at all with this building. So that was a good thing. And there is a 2-page report saying that whole thing that I just mentioned. Again, the current projects, we have the HVACs going on. It's upgrades between RINS, JGS, and here in this building. The Aon Unit 1, that's the one that takes care of the old building, 3 floors. And that is part of the project, along with hot water piping that's coming in from biomass to take a look at the heating in the building, because the heating is not really very good with the radial heating that's coming from the biomass because the piping is so small. So we've asked them, look, you need to take a look at that because we want to rely on more wood chips and less propane to make us efficient and get a payback for that biomass. So that's part of that project, is the hot water piping. And the Aon number 1 here, that will take care of the dehumidification in the old building with the 3 floors. So all that will be dehumidified, which is going to make a big difference in the temperature and air quality and so forth. At RMS and JGS, we do have a signed contract with EEI, who is the contractor. They have already started looking at the grade schools. They're going in there to look at what they have to do for ductwork, where they're going to be putting the equipment, what kind of space they need for equipment. There will be some relocation of classes for maybe 3 to 4 weeks in each one of the grade schools. The principals have already been notified to give them a heads up. The first one is JGS, which is going to start October 18th. Susan's aware of this. And like I said, there was some asbestos found in the cafeteria ceilings tiles, so we're going to look at that. And it's not where there's going to be a lot of ductwork, but nevertheless, we have to address it to see what we're going to do before we touch it. Rooms 264 and 266 in JGS is where most of the ductwork and equipment is going to be done, or the most intrusion. And that's the 2 classes that will have to be relocated for those 3 to 4 weeks, which Susan's aware, and she has a plan to take care of that. All she needed was a week, a notice. She's got 2 or 3 weeks. And that's already starting. Ringe, they are tentatively looking at probably the first week of December to try and start their ductwork there. I believe the 300 wing over there, 301 with art room, if I have my numbers right, and the I think 302 is the last 2 rooms in the back near the exit door. Those are the 2 rooms that are going to have the most intrusion. So Kelly's been asked to look for ways to relocate those 2 rooms for the 3 to 4 weeks so they can do their work. They'll also be doing some work in other places on roofs and so forth, because the target date is May. They're trying to get all this done by May of 2022 without trying to go into the summers, and because they can't do it all in the summertime. They really can't do it all in breaks, holiday breaks or Christmas breaks. They need time to do this. So we're trying to give them as much space and as much time during the school year in addition to holiday breaks, so they can get it done by May. So by summertime, everything will be dehumidified and running and going and so forth. They are looking at the pad in front of RMS. I know there's been some comments on where it is and the looks and so forth. Just so you know, the reason of putting it there, originally it was going to be put just north of the fire pump house. But Eversource stepped in and said, no, we can't do that without a whole lot of changes, meaning move the telephone poles and all the wiring underground, which would have taken forever to do that. And there was paving going on. So they went ahead and put all the conduit and the wiring underneath to that area, because the electric room is going to be right behind that pad in that white door area. Could it be moved down the road? It could be moved, but again, we're looking at the target date of May, and we're just trying to see what we can do. We've got calls in to see if we can't do something around that pad to dress it up. Maybe, one of the engineers said no, but we're going opening other doors to see whether or not we can do something for that. I think after a while, it might go away if we look at the storefront and we look at other areas in front of the building to maybe dress it up better to make it look more presentable than just that pad staring at it. Ways that storefront there is very old. It's been hit by cars and damaged. It's shaky. So we can always look at that storefront, which when I get into future projects, I'm addressing that with exterior doors, because we've got a lot of work to do with exterior doors. So I think the HVAC project is going ahead, pretty good, a pretty good lick. There's somebody visiting the schools almost twice a week, both schools. So it's going forward like we expect it to. I put on the perhaps sinkholes. We have to address that. And the reason, I don't want to scare anybody, but we had to hydro dig a couple of pretty large holes, 8 feet by 8 feet and 8 feet down, 8 feet wide, to get to those pipes that we had to fix. And the only way to do that was to hydro dig them, which means you bring all the gravel and sand out, but nothing comes back in because it's all in the truck to take away. It's all liquefied. So we have 2 big holes sitting there that I don't want to sit there for too long, because I don't want any structural problems. So we're getting prices now to address maybe pumping in some sand or something. There's the outfit, I think, in Renge that did the 7,200 gallon tank that was below the ground. They did that with concrete, which we don't want to do that, but they think they can do something with just light sand, whatever, just to get that filled up, those holes, because we don't want them even open for too long. So that's why it's on there as to do something currently. The future projects, we have several things down the road and we're pretty busy. The district restrooms, which we do have pictures if we want. I can bring those up, some of the pictures of the restrooms. And there's ideas. We've had Turner take a look at restrooms to come up with different. Ruben, if you wanted to talk about some of those or.
Yeah, sure. And we've had a committee, a facilities improvements committee that has been looking at restrooms and some other sorts of things. The restrooms have been a priority for a variety of reasons. Most importantly, because they are not the most private of locations. I think there might be some other pictures in here. I'm not sure. It depends what Trey was able to put in.
Yeah, he took
We
some
certainly gave
pictures.
him a lot of pictures.
You can keep scrolling up.
If you were to walk around, you'd see, well, you'd see into bathrooms. So that's one piece.
I think if you go all the way.
Other things,
Nick,
the fixtures, the furnitures, or the fixtures
Keep
in
going.
general are old.
keep going.
We can do,
Yeah.
we can have healthier fixtures. You can see that this sign, why is that sign there? on what's the-
It's
That's
not
actually a nice
ADA.
sign, right? It's a lie. It's not handicap accessible. You can
Yeah.
see that the size of that is not going to allow anyone who has any needs, physical needs, to be able to get in.
Shop sinks need to go.
These are old and all the schools will be looking to replace these, although
Can hardly
we had a
find
really
parts.
nice walkthrough last week, and there are some very modern approaches that, without doing total restructures,
Mhm.
we can do and kind of keep, especially at the elementary schools, those types of ideas, even though the devices themselves need to go.
You can get rid of those shop sinks and you can put in like touchless things against the wall. It's kind of like the swap out, but
Yeah.
you don't have to put in new walls or anything.
Exactly. This is a
Mm.
picture from the hall. Hey, how are you? I can see everything. So this is just,
Yeah,
this
Thumbs
is
up.
true in the older part of the building. There's lacks some serious privacy. There's other issues, of course, than just seeing in. It's your, ventilation, etc. So a lot of things that we'd like to replace. These are some older stalls within Jaffrey Grade School right here, I
and
believe.
that's
it
hot
is.
water pipes right next to it.
The hot
that's
water pipe,
covered.
yep, that's, yeah. So, basically, some of the things that John's gonna talk about the future has to do with wellness or safety, health and wellness. And this is,
Mhm.
RMS, one of the stalls. I think, I can't remember if it was the girls or the boys.
And a lot of the
bathroom.
panels you don't see are very rusted, very rusted.
Yeah, actually, the panels look really good in these pictures,
Yeah.
comparatively speaking. The floor ceilings, the floor tiles don't. This actually, it's a very old structure, but it's really well maintained. I, again, have to give credit to those individuals who are keeping these places clean. But they're small. Just some of the sinks and so forth that we would be changing out.
And a lot of the
or
sinks
hoping
aren't
to change out.
ADA compliant either.
I don't know if Trey put any of the financial information in this document.
You mean the lease versus the,
Yeah,
it's on, yeah, he did. He
it's on a
took the
different
back
one.
out
Okay,
and
so
he-
we can talk about that when we get there.
Yeah.
But be thinking, kind of put in the back of your head, bathrooms as a piece of that conversation. We also have had several conversations about the bathrooms actually right here in this building. Upstairs, directly upstairs in the high school, and also right out here when you enter the high school
back
area.
up to the High school.
We have some very traditional drawings, and we have some drawings that would
Mhm.
turn bathrooms into single use stalls instead. So not stalls, but actually like, separate rooms like we have in the middle school in some of the places.
Like that one.
Or a hybrid of those. I think that
This is the next one. Yeah.
if we were to look, I'll just give you an example. This is one idea of putting
Mhm.
the boys and girls bathrooms up. Yep, in the high school, right up
Mhm.
above us. This particular drawing, as we went over it with EEI, would be an expensive way of doing things because none of the plumbing is on the wall that they suggest. So, but the concept, we could still, turn it around and use it. The difference here for privacy purposes is that they would be putting in stalls that are not quite floor to ceiling, but very close. So you'd have 2 to 3 inch gap on the bottom, perhaps. There would be no gaps so that you can like peek in or look in or anything, and it would go high. So there would be a lot of privacy, maybe have a little on a doorknob vacancy, or I mean, I'm in here or occupied or not occupied. If we go to the next one, this is the same area, another thought process to allow the most privacy, or just because we have, you know, people who are always looking to get into the bathroom, and sometimes whether they, you know, don't want to be in the bathroom because other people are in the bathroom, or, you know, or just because people need to use the restroom and are concerned about other people hearing, or whatever. There's a lot of reasons.
Mhm.
These are, yeah, with adolescents and so forth. These are all single-use bathrooms.
Mhm.
That right here, however, I will say,
Mm.
after looking at this and kind of going through some numbers with EEI,
Mm.
this would be like a $500,000 bathroom setup if we were to do this. And so that's quite out there. That would be certainly interesting. You'd have a hallway that would go through here. You'd, you know, be able to set up cameras in the hallway just to make sure that you're monitoring who, you know, what's going in for safety and so forth. There are a lot of good reasons to do this one, but
Mhm.
I'm not sure you get the payback as if you had just done something like the other one and made sure you had a single-use bathroom
Mhm.
on the outside or two as well, and make sure that you do some nice work internally to make sure things are private.
I think you
Uh,
said that unisex one, even though we don't want to use that term, was about 4 times the cost
that's
of
right.
the.
It's
of the
it's
other.
for, well, and this one would be more
Yeah.
because of the number of, once again, where the plumbing is and where it's not. This is a complete gut, and you're putting plumbing all over the place where there's zero plumbing right now. Not to mention the walls, the number of walls you'd be building, you'd be
Right.
constructing on this one.
Want to go
This is
towards
at least,
drywall.
this is a
not
$500,000, this $500,000, so. It was an idea, it's, you know, we've, the nice thing is we've looked at a lot of different ideas. And I think, of course, we will have to go forward and choose some cost-effective solutions that are going to give us what we want, give us a nice health and wellness, and be what's good for our kids and our
Right.
community. And I think we can solve that in a variety of ways.
And the grade schools are more or less upgrades,
They're
which
they're
they
more
need,
upgrades than
which they
anything
need.
else, but they would also
And-
get the different types of stalls.
Stalls, yeah.
And if
Yeah.
they're, rather than, I think you do have to have a certain number of fixtures. And so, for instance, if you were to take some of the urinals out in the bathrooms in the elementary, which aren't the most phenomenal things, if we were to leave some of them, the goal is to
Put
actually
long dividers.
change some of them out. But if you were to leave some of them, even in this school or there, you would be putting some dividers and
Long
longer
dividers.
dividers and to just give more privacy for people
Mhm.
where there aren't any right now.
Right.
For instance, if you were to go to middle school, you'd see 3 in a row, no dividers, no barriers.
Right.
Yes, John?
Well, it sounds like you're fairly far ahead in, you know, looking through the options and, you know, moving towards what's going to be appropriate for us. So are there more steps to, when would you anticipate having like a more concrete plan?
Oh, sure.
Well-
Well, I think as he gets going, we'll show you a couple other items that will bring it together a little more concretely.
Okay.
Yeah, I know talking with the EEI, who are the ones that we did the tour with, they're gonna come back with some more plans, because they saw a lot of things that were gonna be changing. And my guess is, don't hold me to it, but the number's probably gonna be somewhere between $1 million, $2 million to do the whole district, all the bathrooms.
Okay.
They just gotta put their pencils to it after what they saw and absorb all and digest all the changes and come back with some more solid numbers and more solid plans, so we can look at and say yay, nay, or change this or change that. So we're gonna have to wait, I imagine, another week or so before we can get those changes from EEI. But that's kind of where the dollar amounts are gonna be sitting from what we discussed on last Friday to do all the bathrooms. Go to the agenda, Nick, please. One other area too that we have to look at is the district exterior doors. You can click on that, Nick, if you would, just to kind of give you an idea of some of the pictures. Having had doors and windows for many, many, many years in my other business, hollow metal doors are not really the choice to have. It should be aluminum doors. And if you can just go through slowly with them, Nick. All those are hollow metal doors, and if they aren't painted properly, which most of these were not, they're gonna rust. They're gonna just get all rusted out, and they weren't. So if you keep on going, we'll give an idea. Now that's the aluminum door there. Those are old, and JGS has some serious problems with oxidizing because of the salt that was allowed to get inside the school and be brushed up against the corners. Go ahead, Nick, keep on. Keep on going. I want to show some detailed pictures. Keep on going. They're all hollow metal doors. So most of 99% of them are hollow metal doors. Keep on going. There's some one-on-ones there. I wanted them to see that, just give you an idea. Those aren't, and they're very difficult to open. In fact, this is what a lot of them look like that are rusting out. And once that bottom goes, you're not even gonna have a door to open. So we have to really keep on going. Please, Nick. We have to really address, see the removable mullions. You can't even remove them. Once these get removed, they're permanent, but they're supposed to be removable mullions so you can have that space. When you open up the doors and get something in, but you can see what's happening to a lot of our doors. They're just all rusting out in a lot of areas. And it's just, we have to address them. And as far as the door, and we have to make sure they're ADA. None of our doors are ADA compliant. And that's another area that we have to address as a school district, is make them ADA compliant. I kind of took a shot at it, and again, it was a shot looking at some plans and knowing what I know, that of all the doors, if you change them to aluminum doors and make them ADA compliant, which means you have to address electric stripes, you have to address power supply, you have to address a lot of things to make all these doors compliant. You could be talking anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000 to address all these exterior doors and make them compliant and have them be aluminum doors instead of hollow metal doors. So it's not a small project. It's gonna, but I just want to put it down here so you can have in the back of your mind of things that you have to budget for, or think of that's coming, that's not going to go away. If anything, it's going to get worse, especially during the winter time when the salt keeps on coming. Similar with the windows. Want to go back to the agenda, please, Nick? Same with the windows. I've taken a look at the windows. Obviously, the ones in the middle school are fine. The Traco windows, they're all broken. They're fine. The windows at the high school are mediocre at best windows that probably don't have the best efficiency. The windows at the grade schools definitely are not good. They're just not efficient whatsoever. The ones at JGS are starting to accumulate mold, the black mold, because they're wood and they're rotting in certain part of the sashes. The ones at RMS are very, very old. And when I say inefficient, they just allow cold air and hot air go back and forth. They just don't have the efficiency ratings that they should have. My suggestion was on those grade schools is probably have a good fiberglass or a vinyl window that has a U value that's somewhere in the 0.2, 0.3 range, which is very, very Energy Star rated, that allows the heat to stay in during the winter and the cold to stay in during the summer. They just need to be addressed. In looking at all the windows, and again, I haven't had time to look at every window, size them out and so forth, but not only getting the right window, but when you get them installed, they should be installed properly. I mean, a lot of the openings are not wrapped properly. They're not foamed properly. They're just not a good opening that was installed with windows installed properly. So to do all that, I'm looking at probably for the 2 grade schools and the high school, you may be looking to $300,000 or $400,000 to have those windows replaced with good, efficient Energy Star windows. Again, it's something you need to look at as a district to see what needs to get done sooner than later. I'm not saying tomorrow, but it's not going to get better. The mold and the rot's going to get worse, the JGS. And you're just going to be blowing out heat, all the time until you get them replaced and done right. So again, I just wanted to bring it up to you so you know. The district flooring, there's still a ways to go on the flooring. I'm anti-carpeting. I mean, always have been. I don't think we should have carpet in the classrooms. A good example is what happened with the mold and so forth. I mean, carpet is a magnet for bacteria, it's a magnet for mold. It's just to me, inefficient to be in our classrooms when you can have a good tile that's easy to maintain, easy to clean. And if they need something to sit on that's soft, give them a throw rug. But it's something that we still have a lot of classrooms in all the schools that should have tile and not the carpet. And there's a lot of them that are old carpet that needs to be done with something because it's kind of disgusting looking. So I just want to put that on there too as a future project that we just have to look at. It needs to get addressed. The masonry improvements, we've already had turn to look at that. That's somewhere around $50,000 to $100,000. I do have pictures. I'm trying to keep it brief for you as I can. But there's a lot of loose bricks. There's a lot of pointing of bricks. There's a lot of mortar that has to be done over again in all the buildings where the expansion joints are. It just needs to be done to seal up the building and make it safe. I know there's some bricks up there that could come out, and you don't want bricks coming out on people's heads because they're pretty high up. That's something that we were going to look at for this summer, but this summer just came and gone with so many problems that we just couldn't address the masonry. But Turner has already done a report on that and showed all the areas that need work. And again, I'm thinking it's probably somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 probably to address all the masonry work in the district. The Route 202 timber, if you want to click on that and just go, I think it's page 31, Nick. We have that planned for this winter to harvest the forest on Route 202, the 100 acres that we have. And I believe it's 31, somewhere on there that outlines it. Yeah. Right there on the left. So all that area is, we anticipated from the contractor that we hired, Dennis McKinney from New England Forestry Services, we'd net maybe $50,000 to $60,000 after expenses and everything to harvest that. And there's stages to harvest. You don't want to go in and just harvest everything because you want the land to thrive and breathe and so forth. And they want to get rid of some hazard trees too, hazardous bushes, hazardous trees, and also look at the trees that you can harvest. And that was in the report, it was around 57,000, I think it was net after expenses. But that project is on the books to be done this winter because fall and winter is the time to do this kind of work. And he's already been contacted. He's going to get back to me with some more numbers and kind of get crews together and give us an idea of when and we can do this. So I'll have more information after that. Okay, Nick, the agenda will be fine. Thank you. You can click on the auditorium edition. This is something I know we can address too, but that's something down the road to look at. There's another picture too after that one, which brings in the, yeah, stand that one if you want, but it's been looked at by Turner. I mean, they're looking at that. Some drawings. I think the next one shows a better two or the next couple. Is that the only one?
So this right here, once again, this is just this concept art.
Yeah.
Basically, these aren't serious plans, but the idea in talking with our learners and some of the teachers, as well as the administration, and just the fact that we don't have an auditorium, for instance, in a middle and high school. It's very rare that is the case, but we don't have that. There are some needs from an educational standpoint that we would want to have here. Now, the best way, the most cost-effective way, or whatever, that has not really been looked at. Certainly, the committee that we brought this to said, you know what, we've had the Park Theater in here for a couple months. We need to see how our partnership with the town can look before we consider really moving forward with something like this. That being said, it's difficult to imagine that we'd have the type of access that we would really need in a school setting. It's not like our learners can just keep on walking down there and that we can do that any time of the day. The idea, there were years of conversations about making the front entrance of the building look different. And so this, you can see in the red are offices, the hallway between the red and the gray over there, that's the existing walkway into the school. So you can see that the construction of this, the idea anyway, was that would come out of the front where all those flag poles and everything are currently in the high school. pretty close to the new parking lot area. And you'd have, different music rooms with maybe some practice rooms, a 500-seat auditorium, all that. So just some ideas just to think about. This was simultaneous to the conversation of, if we did that, then we could stop stressing out the Pratt, which is getting abused and overused. We've done a nice job taking care of it over the last few years. But it's, it's not really effective for everything that we do here. And so, and also what even what the town needs it for. And so updating that at the same time as a concept that we'd want to look at down the road, whether it be enlarging it, whether it be, obviously, if you have something like this, you can use the stage area for something completely different. Maybe put a different type of athletic type of room next door, put more bleachers in, what have you. There's a lot of different things you can do that aren't terribly expensive in the whole scheme of things. This is an expensive type of project. I wouldn't lie on that. That's why, now is not the time to kind of push forward this in this way. We need to do a lot more thinking, a lot more conversing with our community is what we need. These are more educational wants or needs, not the more immediate stuff what we were talking about with health, wellness, and safety. Those are the priority that we need to focus on. But it's good just to kind of put out there, and these are the conversations that are happening. A lot of you aren't privy to all those conversations, which is why John's here tonight.
So Ruben,
Mhm.
just, do we have an idea, as you said, this might not be something that we
Mhm.
are ready to do at this juncture, but if we did, do we know what the price ballpark would be for this?
Yeah, something like this, if you were to tack on some of the simple renovations to the Pratt, would be around 11 to 11.5 million.
Right.
To give you an idea of what schools are being built for right now, they just spent a little over 80 million, I think, building the Dover school. I think even more than that, because there's another portion of it that's being built for the ATC portion. Another school in the region, in the area, I can't remember which one it is, but it's like 100 million that they're building it for right now. So, back 10 years ago, if you were building something for 40 million, you had quite the big, beautiful place.
Right.
It's just, that's not what it is anymore. And so if we were to, for instance, build a new school on property, it would be a minimum of 60, I'm sure, for a middle high school, if you were to do something like that. Dover is a much bigger place, so I was.
Sure. Okay, thank you for that.
And building aid, there's a formula to it, and we've
Agenda, Nick.
gotten information on that, but
But building aid is still fairly minimal. with
it's
this.
minimal
Yeah.
for when you're talking dollar figures that big. That's why John brought in this, one of the reasons why John brought in the structural engineer to take a look at this facility to say, all right, what's the viability of this place? I mean, we've got a lot of stuff going on, and for him to take a good look at it, again, not super detailed yet, but to take a look at it and say, actually, this is in pretty good shape.
Worth investing in.
It's in good shape, of course. And I think he also did mention something to the effect of, when you start disturbing what was it? He said the
Disturbing
soil or the
ground.
ground that this was
It's
built
full of
on was
clay.
less than ideal. I believe this is
Yeah.
phrase, but
And we got a freeway of drainage right in the area where you want to add these buildings
yeah,
to.
it
There's
wouldn't
a
be without
whole drainage system
problems.
underneath that you have to do
Yeah.
something with.
Difficulties that would have to be overcome.
Thank you.
And I think we're probably we could go on for a while, but if
Yeah.
you go to just skip, I think, to whatever the bond versus,
If you kind of hit future projects, Nick. Talking about that.
yeah. So we have talked before about the fact that we know that the RMS and the JGS and a portion of the middle school HVAC work is actually starting, and it should be done by May. That's really exciting. The bulk of it is being paid, or all of that part of it is being paid through grants. The question then, of course, is what do we do with the rest of the middle school and all of the high school? EEI had done, who was doing the work, had done kind of a survey of what it would be in order to go forward with that work, and it's, you know, it's expensive. It's 3.5 or 4 million, I think, and along with some electricity, about 4 million, I think. And it means an entire summer of very invasive work in the high school. The middle
Mhm.
school is not so tough,
No,
comparatively
it
speaking.
just has several air handlers, but it's not going to be intrusive.
Right, it's not gonna be intrusive. If we were, you know, in talking with EEI, they were interested in staying through if they could, understanding that, I mean, understanding from us, the benefit is if we could get this work done, it would knock multiple years of having to kind of do piecemeal over time. It also allows us to get some work done like within the next year, what I would call immediate, really, because a lot of places are trying to get this sort of work done. And there are fewer places out there that do all of this type of bigger construction. So getting someone locked in is difficult. We want bathrooms, for instance, that might be an important piece. Maybe doors are in that as well. Whatever the package is, you know, they are willing to stay and continue doing some work, but obviously it's not free. And so funding this is something that we have to consider, the how and the how much. And so what Carrie did here, EEI is, you know, suggests that we do something like a lease. There's a couple different ways, and we haven't heard back from our attorney yet as to what really we could do with the description of what we're talking about doing. A lease being the board enters into a lease and just puts the payments into the budget, and then you pass a budget. A lease could be a separate warrant article on the warrant. And then a bond, of course, is definitely an article on the warrant as well. The difference between the lease and the bond, the lease, you have, if you put it in your budget, then you do the work when the budget's passed, and you keep on doing that year after year. If you have it as a warrant, sorry, on the warrant article, you have it as a warrant article, then you would need 50% or more to pass that in order to go move forward of the voters. If you were to have a bond, you would need 3/5. So that's 60%. So if you go for a bond, you have, and it doesn't pass, or if you go for a lease and it doesn't pass, no means no when you stick it on a warrant article. So you're in kind of a stuck zone if that's the case, but that's fine. But what Carrie did here was show the difference, a little bit of a difference between interest rates and time periods between a bond and a lease. Those lease numbers down below, I don't know if you can enlarge those a little bit. Thank you. Those are fairly accurate numbers. Those 2% for 10 years, 2.33% for 15, 2.5 or more for 18 years. I don't think any of us are interested in doing something for 18 years. Something this minimal, I'm not even sure 15 years is a good idea. But nonetheless, you can see that those are fairly accurate numbers, what the total interest would be on those types of loans, basically. If you were to go up, however, to the bond, you'll see that the rates are quite a bit less. And actually, these are conservative numbers. Right now, if we were to get a bond right now, we likely could actually get below 1%. And so you'd end up saving quite a bit of money if you went for a bond. The difference is you need to, your community needs to support it very boldly in the voting booth.
60%.
You need 60% because we're an SB2 community. At one point in time, would have been 2/3. Yes,
In both communities. So you could have one community.
total.
Total, yeah.
So one community might not support it in a majority, but if the other one overwhelmingly does.
As long as overall.
If you have 5,000 voters between the two and you end up getting 60% of those.
You get
So 3,000 of
whatever you
those
get.
are in good order. Yeah.
I would recommend the doors and the windows be in a budget versus something like this. So at least if the budget is tweaked, you can at least still do some windows and doors. Versus if it got turned down, you don't want to be in a position, I don't think, of not addressing some of these issues that I've showed you. Just my opinion.
The reason why the 5 million was chosen, because it was a nice number.
Right.
But it also was a realistic number that could be, if like, for instance, the board says, hey, this is work that we're interested in doing. And yeah, what's, in looking at what the payments are going to be and what we're going to be paying for interest over the years and all this kind of stuff and what we're going to get back, we can't go above X number, maybe that's 5 million. Then what you do is you say, all right, well, we know the HVAC is about 3.5 to 4 million. And we have bathrooms and we can get a lot done for $1 million. It may not be everything, but you might get your most important things and you put the other ones on kind of a annual, bring up the speed type of process. Again, if you do that Taj Mahal bathroom upstairs, which would be phenomenal, that's obviously those are big dollars. If you do things like that, you can only do fewer of them. So when EEI was saying between $1 million and 2 million, they're probably solidly thinking more in the 1.5 if we were to look at all of our bathrooms the way we did, not destroying them all and bringing them up to speed, but doing that to a couple of them and then just kind of bringing the rest of them up to speed.
So sounds like maybe a 10-year lease, something, or 10 or 15.
Well, I mean, I think we have to look at it once again, a lease, you can see the difference between a 10-year lease right there and a 10-year bond. And it's not too terribly different in interest. Actually it is, it's about 92, it's like $100,000 difference over the life of that time. That's a lot of money. 10 years, it's 10,000 a year. So that's another way, maybe that doesn't seem quite as bad. But something this small, I would think you would not want to be indebted for a long period of time.
Right. Well, Ruben, what about the two different lease options? Obviously, if you put it in the budget, then you don't have to go to through the voting process. On the other hand, a 50% approval is not such a high bar. So are there advantages to doing one over the other?
Well, if we're allowed to do a lease and just put it into the budget, then if you're going to do a lease, that seems to be the way to do it. Because you think of, all right, you're the school board, you have you're in charge of kind of making sure that this thing goes well. It's not necessarily up to everyone to say, no, I want to ignore schools and things that we need to get done. You're doing things that are health, wellness, and safety wise. Let's go forward and doing them. And we feel that this is the way to do it and not just a piecemeal it. Obviously, if you want a riskier approach, and I say riskier because it's not necessarily riskier, because I think there's a lot of value in actually having to communicate to people and sell the work that you're trying to do and to be forthright and honest and to invite people into the conversation, have them be a part of it in a more upfront way. And if you do that, you can save a ton of money by going through a bond process. If for me, and I were just looking at money, I would take that route in a heartbeat, with the understanding that we would have to work really hard to get the word out to have people come out and vote, because you would want it to be as sure a thing as possible. But it's up, we have to have those conversations. It's why I asked him to come tonight to talk about the facilities and the things that we've done so far. The things that are in the works, some needs, and we're still working on some kind of more, long range planning. But depending on what we're going to be doing in the next couple months is going to greatly impact that long range planning rather than, so we want to make sure that we're being upfront, and also because we know we're hitting a budget season, give us time to think about the options as opposed to being in 2 weeks or 3 weeks thrown out, with all this information about money. It's not easy to make these decisions. And maybe this is not the year. That's also another possibility. I don't think so. I think it is the time to do it. But
Sure.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned the no means no regulation, and we saw that with the parking lot.
Yep.
That is one risk, that if we do go ahead, then we're kind of stopped for the following year
yes,
from doing anything.
yes.
And in terms of HVAC and bathrooms, is that a concern? How much of a concern is it? I mean, is it okay to have to wait a year or two on the one, but more problematic on the other? Or?
Well, the HVAC is a more problematic one because if you miss this opportunity, it's going to take a couple of years to be able to have the opportunity again. In this, unless something changes,
Because we'll lose our contract.
you'll lose the contractor, and
Well,
there'll
not
be
to
a
m-
lot
not-
of people looking for contractors out there.
Not to mention the condition that our HVAC systems are in right now, especially the high school. We have a majority of them are unit ventilators that are dying. So if we don't do something,
As we've
we're not
talked,
gonna
because
have
like
any.
you said, the unit ventilators themselves, which are the high school units,
Right.
they're either shut or they're open. But we're of course keeping them open. You keep them 100% open all the time.
We're beating them up.
You're
Yeah.
tiring them out.
Yeah.
So
And we already know
Yeah.
that when, we did what, a year or so ago, the whole assessment of that, when they were purchased, how long their life expectation was, and they've already like kind of some doubled what they were supposed to
yeah,
do
our
and stuff. I
staff,
mean, they've just.
our
been
staff
there
has done a
for-
great job actually keeping the lifespan going. They regularly change the filters when they need to, perhaps more than what are even recommended sometimes. So Brian Lloyd has done a fantastic job over the years, making sure that happens. So the maintenance on them has been pretty good, and they're a lot of them are at end of life,
Yeah.
normal, what the
what the
expectancy is.
expectancy
Yes.
and beyond, yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say also the bathrooms, to me, that's a
Mhm.
pretty pressing one too, because along with the doors, because none of it is ADA compliant.
Yeah,
No.
that's an issue.
And
No.
then this is not a new thing,
Yeah.
we should have addressed this before
Mhm.
now.
Yeah, and the privacy issues, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but there's a lot of different types of privacy issues
Yep.
that we're talking about. And so benefiting everybody is important.
Well, I'm gonna pull a Charlie and say that ultimately it will come down to the taxpayers' dollars in
Mhm.
terms of their impact. And so working with Carrie to understand how it trickles down and what it would mean, the impact is obviously very powerful and opportunity, but then in this day and age, how can we make it work for everybody in terms of who pays for it?
Mhm.
I too like to go with the bond direction. But I am concerned that, something so ambitious, so much more ambitious even than parking lots, right? Won't be supported. And I hate to say that our school district wouldn't be supported by the community that has their kids coming here. So, I believe that they could.
Mhm.
I guess I would want to have assurances
Mhm.
if there's any way of doing it.
It's a lot to think about.
It
right?
is.
Any other?
John said he could go on for like 2 or 3 more
No, that's
hours.
okay.
but-
I have my protein bar.
He's got so much going on.
Verify that that's true, but it's so much. And you made the point at the last meeting, or someone made the point at the last meeting that on
Agenda.
Facebook, people are saying, and to think
Oh,
we
they-
could have had a new school 25 years ago. I don't know when that exactly, 21 years ago, out of that land that we're now foresting, that's
Mhm.
crazy. Especially for those of us who are relatively newcomers to town 20 years on.
Well,
I won't.
what's really crazy is that, and I'm sure you'd have to be at this point in time doing some renovations and fixing up on things as well. You know, maybe even replacing some of the ventilators, right? So that still may have been happening with something even that old. But it would be certainly a lot less, and hopefully it would have been maintained very nicely from the start. But it would have been paid for.
Yeah.
It would have been all done. Yeah.
And we would have had pool.
We would have. Not many schools in New Hampshire have pools. That would be a pretty interesting place.
I mean, I don't want to keep you all night. We can see there's several other things
Yes.
that we have to address, but you know, unless you want me to go through them, I'm more than happy to, but there are just other projects that are staring us in the face that
Can
we,
you send this to us so that it's not linked on the agenda, just so that we
I
can
think-
access it?
Yeah, I got,
It will be
It will
linked.
yeah, I got some of these things late, so I just didn't have time to
Okay.
put them up
Sure.
before. So all this,
I'd like to
anything that
take a
gets sent to
closer
me
look at
gets
some of the pictures.
added after,
Yeah.
so.
absolutely.
Does anyone have any specific questions to John about anything perhaps that hasn't been talked about? That you could ask a quick question on? Okay, so I saw Lisa's hand first, then John, so
Yeah.
go on.
Not that hasn't been talked about, but I want to just come around back to priorities. What I'm hearing priorities are bathrooms,
Mhm.
and that's a big chunk, and windows, and clearly doors,
And HVAC.
the doors, the HVAC,
Mhm.
and the windows are really the priorities that
Those
this
are-
year, you're seeing in the next 12 months.
That's the big
If-
ticket items that in the next year or two, at longest, 2 years, because some of these, like I said, they're gonna get worse, not gonna get better.
Mhm.
And I know you can't address all at one time, you're talking $4 or $5 million. And it's a hard choice sometimes to make, but all those areas you just mentioned are in poor need of having something done
Okay.
to them.
For budget time, would it be possible to have a general idea of numbers on those so that we can kind of see what needs to be piecemealed and see the best routes? Is that possible? They were throwing around pretty general, but is there any way to, as budget season's coming, that we can see what you think?
We have, yeah, I mean, we have some pretty close numbers on the HVAC for the high school, because we've already been through that with EEI. As far as bathrooms, we should have something shortly. I'm hoping from them after their walkthrough. And on the doors and windows, I can get numbers for that pretty close. Right now, it's about $750,000, but I can get that narrowed down once I do my walkthrough and get some sizes and so forth.
And the windows and the doors,
Mhm.
getting ADA compliant is a pretty big thing. So
It
that'd be
it
nice
is, it is. And not having black mold be growing in the windows and the sashes. I mean, all that's, I think, some serious stuff. Unfortunately, it's all hitting the district all at once, but I can't
Well, and the
help
other
that.
big ticket item there that's, I would say that would fall into that category of safety is the JGS parking lot.
Mhm.
So
We-
whether that's a next year thing or next summer.
We
thing,
repaired one large
or-
sinkhole in there already because it started collapsing underneath, because the catch basins are very, very old in that parking lot and it's starting to draw from the surface. And we had about a 15-foot wide perimeter sinkhole at the beginning of the summer that we had to fix and take care of. So, and there's others like that in there. They just haven't sunk yet.
Just waiting.
And we do attach this, we don't need to do it now, but you can go in and look at the Dubois and King plans that we didn't get past a couple of years ago when we tried to do it all. For JGS, just to give kind of an idea, but that, at that time, and that project was, for JGS was, I think.
You can hit that link if you want, Nick.
800,000,
But
because I think the range was over $1 million, I think it was like 2 million together, and I think that's
Mhm.
kind of the breakup as what it was, if I recall. I don't think it was the other way around, but it's just, it's an expensive project. The point is, it's expensive to do that.
Ringes had.
a lot of those things are, I mean, the RMS freeze is around $50,000, but it's going, it's on its last legs. It's freezing up every day. They gotta scrape it down. So I mean, there's just things like I'll put in the budget, but they could go at any time.
But with a little bit of like flavored syrup and stuff like that, you can take that and turn it into snow cones. So there's like a
Yeah.
positive.
There we go. Hey,
Yeah.
kids, guess what's for dessert today?
He always puts positives on
I'm just
everything.
trying to look at the good
Yeah.
stuff.
All right, John, you had a question?
Just an item, I was wondering, is there anything on your list relating to the lower athletic field?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That was all part of, I know there's a project that Heather is involved in, improving the fields. There's also drainage, and things that we have to address with a lot of the water down there. So these are all, I mean, does that have to happen? It's not as important as the others that we just talked about, but there's projects that needs to get done. And over at RMS, there's wavy fields that they really shouldn't be playing on because, again, that goes to the leach field to try and find out what's going on with leach field, because that's what the soccer field is a leach field. So all those kind of go together, but they're not as a priority as the others, but they're still on the list. It's on the radar. They aren't gonna go away.
All right. Thanks, John.
Thank you,
Okay,
John.
very well.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John. Okay, so next up, action item, we have two. The first one's the reopening framework update.
So this is just hope that you, a request for you to approve some different language. It's not anything different in what we talked about, I don't believe, but I'm bringing here because maybe I'm remembering something different. It's certainly not any different than what I've been promoting in my emails. I've actually used the word mandate in some cases in some of my emails, but there have been some circumstances where I think the lack of clarity of language that we put in, we would benefit from having clarity of language. So the difference is, and Nick, you had been part of this a little bit, so correct me if I make some sort of error here. But basically, when we have when we're in the recommended area of our matrix, we've used language that says that that currently exists, that says something to the effect of that when masks are recommended indoors, they need to be worn when 3 feet of distancing cannot be maintained. That's a little bit, what we meant was it would be required within 3 feet of social, if you're not going to be able to have 3 feet of social distancing. So the word required is what I'm looking for in there, rather than, because what you could say, technically how it's written is, well, 3 feet of social distancing can be maintained here. So we're not going to do that, even though they're together for a foot here or 2 feet here, you know, that's not really the idea. It's just kind of cleaning it up and making it a little firmer. There have been both learners and adults who have, I think, need some clarification on it.
So if two students are working together on a project
Mhm.
and they're at a table, so like using us as an example, hi Alicia, we're working on a project together.
Yeah, like
We're
that.
clearly within 3 feet of each other.
That's correct. Those masks should be on.
And who would, I'll use the word intervene, but I don't mean that in the punitive sense.
Mhm.
So who's responsible for saying, hey, I should put a mask on because you're right next to me? Is it the student that's initiating that, or is the adult in the
Well, the
room?
learner should definitely initiate it. But if it was in a classroom setting, the teacher would be responsible for making sure that that's taking place. So if you were to go into an elementary school, one of our elementary schools, you would see that, okay, we're going to go from one classroom to the lunchroom. We're in a line. They're clearly not 3 feet from each other. Teacher says, put your mask on, they do. If I ask someone to put the mask on in the hallway, they put the mask on. You know, I say, if they're in the hallway, I say, you guys need more space, boom. I've had zero, maybe it's because of my position, but I've had zero problems with people, you know, making the change when they've been asked to or pointed that out. We just have to be more vigilant. I think using the word require also helps us to be more vigilant about that, just to make sure that, I mean, I know that in our building trades class, for instance, they're doing projects together all the time. Masks are worn.
And meal times?
Well, meal times when you're eating, But I think that to your point, like in line for cafeteria, I've done a little bit of auditing and we could improve.
I'm just curious, it's so different.
It is. I mean,
It's hard to
interesting
find.
enough, we've had, you go into the lines, for instance, if you, in the cafeteria at the high school, and you'll see, they're doing better, but sometimes they've been fairly close, and then to actually not have had any, actually have very low illness, I think the lowest illness out of the entire place, and to have very few COVID numbers and so forth is interesting.
Well,
you
and
know,
if they,
but-
it fits their preference not to wear masks,
Mhm.
distancing is the
Is the key.
next best
Yeah,
thing.
so
right?
you're,
So-
well, distancing is actually, and the reading I see, the distancing is the best thing. There's studies from last year talking about the difference between a meter distance and 2 meters of distance, and mathematical values in there of what one is better than the other one, and why it was better, and so the social distancing is important. So that's why we made it an or in that situation, but we knew that if that 3 feet, which is the measure that the entire world uses, the 1 meter uses for that social distancing, if that can't be maintained, then we put a different mitigation strategy in. Certainly, putting more mitigation strategies out all at the same time is probably the best way to go. My suspicion is that schools who have focused on masking all the time and haven't focused on social distancing, as some examples that we've seen with a lot of clusters going on, I think that has a lot more to do with it. I think masking is certainly helpful. There's no question that, water droplets are being caught right in here, but it matters more that I'm 4.5 feet right now from Charlie.
I think to Patty's point, it would be helpful maybe to provide just some different, obviously not a conclusive list of scenarios that it might be required in the yellow zone. I mean, we have so many questions here and we've talked about this so much. So I can only imagine that staff and perhaps families would as well. So that would be my feedback with this change.
I guess while I agree with the thought, I'm thinking about this practically. I work in an elementary school that's fully masked, and practically it is impossible to keep young children from being next to each other. There's no time frame in this saying if you're within 3 feet of each other for more than 10 minutes, in the rooms. Does every room even have masks? Because a lot of kids come without them. Our kids stop at the door and given a mask. Are they, you're working on a project real quick and you're right next to each other. You might not have a mask anywhere near you, because it's not a requirement. We're not telling kids they have to come with a mask. So does every classroom have it? And are the teachers able to jump up and say, oh, you guys are here, grab a mask? I think practically speaking, I don't see this manageable for elementary whatsoever. I really don't. It's just, there's too much movement. I watch the kids getting in line for the school buses and they're jostling and you can't, stay 3 blocks apart. You hear it all the time. It's without being able to, without an adult having 20 masks on their arm to be able to constantly hand out. I don't see this. I don't see this physically manageable.
Well, I can speak from my own personal experience. I have both a 2nd grader and a 4th grader, and both of their teachers utilize several different strategies that support that. And from the stories that they've shared with me, it feels like it flows very seamlessly. So in the 2nd grade classroom, they have lanyards. They're down when they're distanced, and their teacher reminds them, oh, we're going into the hall and it's a mask time. So I guess from what I've experienced, I would disagree because it seems like teachers have been able to develop some strategies that do make it possible.
I was in all the schools this past week, and in the elementaries, I was in both of them. One just as a group were one lunch was starting, and then when I was in the other, it was just finishing. So, and in every case, every kid had their mask on. I mean, they were all there lined up, and I did see, I think one teacher, swap one out because one had broken or something like that for a kid.
I
But
have to just give so much kudos to our staff. I mean,
Yeah.
because they really, that's a lot of effort, in the beginning of the school year, setting up those expectations and those routines. And it seems like they've done a really great job developing those strategies and approaches.
yeah, I was really impressed.
Could I just ask that when, like, this is broached with told to the faculty, that they're just reminded, please check and make sure you have everybody has a box of masks. That you all, check to make sure you all have them in your rooms, keep them filled. That's just a reminder, so you can just grab really fast.
I mean, we did provide them all with ongoing,
Mhm.
making sure.
Yeah, I think here's the deal. I think that I agree with you. It's nearly impossible to enforce completely. But the point of the matter is we need to have the language that suggests that it is important. I mean, like I said, I've thrown emails out there already using the word required, mandatory, all that kind of sort of thing with families when that happens. But it's more just to make a statement. And if you want to keep the language the way it is, that's perfectly fine as well. I'm not going to pry it away, because to me it means the exact same thing. I just think it means different things to different people. And this was for the purpose of clarifying the intent of what I originally put forward anyway. I mean, yeah, kids are in the hallway. Your timing issue is absolutely correct, because if we were going to do a contact tracing thing, they wouldn't be concerned with kids 3 feet together for 2 minutes. It's not that big of a deal. And when they're in a lunch line or whatever, and they're 2 minutes, they would never consider them close contacts. It would be a 15 minutes. 15 minutes would be what you'd be looking for.
I
Charlie,
think Nick has something.
beg your
I think
pardon?
Nick has something to add.
Oh,
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was understood that nothing in practice, this isn't an additional practice. This is something we've already been doing.
it's just
It's
articulating.
just the language itself is being just altered to provide more clarity, so that we're making sure that people are doing this in specific scenarios. And if we have to do things like Alicia said, like Ruben had some emails where he said, here are some examples of indoor scenarios in which you would be masking. I think construction trades was one that you had brought up at one point. Masking and lines going to places,
Yeah.
things like that. So if that's
Yeah.
something that we also need to,
You see a lot in small reading groups all the way through the schools. Yeah.
and I can, again, speaking from experience, I do know that there was a situation in which my daughter, who attends JGS, lost a mask, and they had masks to provide to the students. So I know that at least in some classrooms, they have child appropriate size masks that they can wear in the event that they don't have them. And again, that doesn't speak district wide, but at least. to
Yeah, we've got
certain
thousands upon
places.
thousands of these. It was the smaller children's size masks, to your point, that we had to go and purchase more.
So when we also last year, we made updates to the framework
Mhm.
almost every 2 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry if I don't remember passing the changes, like making a vote or passing the changes, just that we were informed that there was an update to the language or a correction. And so I guess that's why I'm asking here. It asks for.
Yeah,
If
we
voted,
definitely
okay.
voted
I'm
because
told-
this is policy.
It's
Okay.
policy. so it
Well,
had
then
to be-
I would like to make a motion that
Okay.
we pass this updated change that notes that masking, the word required be emphasized in clarification. Do I have to read it?
Scenarios provided.
And would recommend that there be certain areas provided.
Yeah, we can put scenarios in there. I've sent an email or two out with scenarios, so we can put some more, but in the document itself for
Yeah.
clarification purposes.
Yeah.
Again, it's not meant to be, oh, you're 3 feet, you don't have a mask, you're in trouble. It's,
We're
you're gonna
setting the
be doing some
expectation.
work together right now. You're gonna be doing it for a period of
It's
time.
required.
And we understand, you know, you're gonna be doing it. Like, that's not an option. You're in the hallway for 2 minutes. Most of them actually are doing pretty well, keeping apart from each other, but it's not
Yeah.
as crucial a situation.
All right, so I have a motion to go forward with this kind of clarification language and recommending adding scenarios as examples. So I need someone to second that. We're going forward. John,
Second.
thank you. Okay, and I'm going to do, oh, is there any more discussion? Okay, then I'll go to a roll call vote. Christine,
Yes.
thank you. John,
Yes.
thank you. Lisa,
Yes.
thank you. Charlie?
Aye.
Thank you. Patty?
Yep.
Thank you, Alicia.
Yes.
Thank you. I say yes. So that's 7. Any objections or abstains? No. So 700. And how about the budget calendar now?
So we
Most
brought
of
the
it's-
budget calendar to the finance committee, looked it over. I believe Carrie has passed it through with the attorneys at this point in time.
Yes, she
And there
has.
doesn't seem to be anything that needs to be adjusted. These are similar to what we've had in years past. The dates are all based upon kind of well, especially when we get into the January, February, March timeframes, you know, there are deadlines. So they're all in compliance with all of that.
Any questions or anything about this budget calendar? John?
Yes, just the layout of the meetings starting on at the school board meeting on the 6th of December, and then the following Saturday, that all sounds good. Just wondering about any budget information that we would expect from Carrie as the business administrator. Would we be getting data prior to that? And if so, in what time frame?
Yeah, the goal is always to do it as early as possible. So in November, we try to get it done before the Thanksgiving. That has not always happened. But we try certainly to do that. I do know that we are in the throes of changing the accounting systems. So Carrie, actually this week, is learning how to use all the budgeting processing within that system. So I can see a few glitches here and there happening. Hopefully that won't be the case, but I suspect you'll get it sooner because we're gonna probably intensify our finance committee efforts prior to that December timeframe, so that a lot of the thinking can be done ahead of time. And at least a lot of the inquiry can be done ahead of time so that we can move forward. And the principals are starting to look at their budgets right now. And certainly John has never stopped looking at his budget. He doesn't care about his budget though. He just keeps on asking for more. So
He knows
and
it
I would
all
say that
one
if you
way.
were here too. So you know, no, he's done a great job managing and finding the best pricing every single time. So it's been good, even though it's been
So
expensive.
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the budget development calendar.
Thank you, Charlie.
A second?
Thank you, Lisa. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Christine?
Yes.
Thank you. Alicia?
Yes.
Thank you. Patty?
Yes.
Thank you, Charlie.
Aye.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
Thank you, John.
Aye.
Thank you. I say aye. Objection abstains, none. So that passes 700. Committee updates. Policy didn't meet. I've said a couple times that I was part of the walkthrough for the facilities. I'm not on facilities anymore, but I was available and I was on facilities when we started that process, so it made sense since I was the one that took the pictures the first time around that I'd be there this time. So we did that, but we've already heard all the stuff, the results of that, so.
Finance committee has not met since the last meeting, and we won't meet until the 3rd Thursday.
Okay,
Yeah, we're still getting dates on the other ones.
okay, great. Public comments?
All right, so once again, if you would like to make a public comment, you can do so by using the hand raise feature on your screen. Just use your first name, last name, and town of residence before you make a comment. And yeah, our policy is working this time. Then just make sure you follow the policy. All right, I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay, thanks. Any board matters? I guess I just have one thing that was in my mailbox here. It was just I was CC'd on a letter that Kelly got at RMS, thanking their participation in the September 11th Cathedral of the Pines thing that they lent a flag or something. And anyways, so I just thought that was nice that there was that kind of cooperation. And since I got a copy of it, I thought might as well note that and say hats off to Kelly for that little effort there. So, okay. If there's no other board matters, then the future items, we don't have anything. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yep. We need a updated org chart.
The ever-changing org chart. Okay.
Yeah, we can put that on the next one. I mean, they're done, so within reason.
Then if I could have a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you,
Second.
Patty, Alicia. And we're done. Thank you very much.
All right.
Good night.
Good night. Thanks.